There we go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock here, practicing necromancer. And today I want to talk religious rights, specifically that of the Constitution. And I think this is actually very important because of the fact that online I've seen a lot of controversy, religious disputes, segregation, and most importantly, legal ramifications within various different types of religious organizations. Basically, people saying, well, you can't practice your religion because of this, and this, or to the fact that national or internationally, you have laws that are being violated because of the fact that law enforcement and the legal system gets involved. Okay, so here it is. We all know that the freedom of speech within the First Amendment gives you the right to say whatever the fuck you want to say. But keep in mind that you want to choose your words carefully. And the reason for that is if you have no proof of anything that you're trying to speak on, it becomes defamation of character. It's slander, basically. And if you have a history of slandering somebody, guess what? That person can sue you in a civil suit. Okay. Now, that's why I always tell you back up what you practice, because the last thing anybody needs is a lawsuit based off defamation of character, slander, or otherwise. Okay. Now, with that said, let's take a look at the First Amendment. Okay. It doesn't just apply to freedom of speech. Okay. Basically, you have a right to speak your religious practices freely and openly. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's in the workplace, it does not matter if it's out in public. Okay. You could be in the middle of a restaurant or let's say, for an example, a store. And if you're having a conversation with somebody, they do not have a right to limit you or to deny you your religious, perspectives. Okay. And you can actually find this underneath Google as well. So, I mean, you can type in First Amendment rights, religious protections and liberties. You can type in religious, what is it called there? I believe there's also a PDF called Federal Law Protections for Religious Liberty, if I remember correctly. But you got to remember, it's not just the First Amendment that protects your rights as a religious um, practitioner. You can also go into the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, where if a peace officer comes to your door, they number one have to announce to you why they are there. Okay. This means you have a right to remain silent. You have a right not to speak to them. Okay. Outside of saying, get off my door, get off my property. Okay. This alone, they have to legally tell you why they are there. If they do not, well, guess what? They're in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Okay. The Fifth Amendment right gives you the liberty to basically tell them to piss off. You don't have to say a fucking word. A lot of times when they come to you, they will, like, say, for an example, if they pull you over in a car or on the side of a road because you're dressed head to toe in black. Okay. Excuse me for just a second. Fly be free. So that was Harley. I do apologize for her. She thinks she owns my desk. So, anyways, um, the Fifth Amendment basically they will pull you over or ask you to come over. Okay, you don't have to say a word to them. This is national, by the way. This is not just national but international. Right to travel. This is the 14th Amendment. Okay, if you actually take a look at the 14th Amendment, it literally describes and breaks down the right to travel. Okay, it does not matter if you're on foot. It does not matter if you're on a horseback and carriage. It does not matter if you're in a vehicle. Okay, without proof, without evidence to back up their claims, they can say whatever the fuck they want to sit there and question you. Okay, for an example, let's take the identification process here. Okay, let's say a license. Okay, there's only two exceptions to the 14th Amendment. Okay, it does not matter if it's international traveling or just national travel. Okay, from state to state, country to country. Okay, if you follow the 14th Amendment, if a law officer pulls you over and says, well, I have to deny you, really, what's your cause? What is your reasoning behind this? Okay. Number one, there are only two ramifications here that can limit you. Number one is national security. Okay. And the other is health code. Look at 9/11. Okay. Prime example there. Okay. 9/11 was a horrific day. Okay. This, therefore, all flights were banned, grounded. Rights to travel were limited. You couldn't go anywhere due to the fact that it became a national security risk. If you follow, say, for an example, the World um, Health Organization, for an example, this, for an example, was COVID. Okay, shut down the entire world. Okay, the entire world, all because of a company in China. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is those are the only two reasons why you would be restricted from going from state to state or country to country. Officers tend to pull you over or to stop you to prevent you from doing anything with no reasoning behind it outside of you look suspicious. Really, that's not a crime. Okay, that is not a crime. You can look weird. You can you can dress up as Big Bird and running around with a in a halo and a pink tutu, and they couldn't fucking do a goddamn thing to stop you. Okay. Now this basically falls underneath the first, like I said, the 14th Amendment, and it's the right to travel and the without a license or any form of identification. Okay. Even if you're in a car, you do not have to give them a thing. You don't have to answer their questions underneath the Fifth Amendment. You don't have to do anything like that. Okay. You have a right to remain silent. Do so. Okay. All you have to do is put them on notice. By putting them on notice, such as the 14th Amendment, guess what? That means you're not playing and you're putting them on notice of that. Now, underneath religious perspectives, if you join a priesthood, for an example, if you become a priest and a minister within, say, let's go with Wiccan or pagan practices, Satanism practices, even, okay, you become a priest or a priestess. Now, in this case, you are protected underneath the First Amendment. And if you go underneath religious land use and personalized religious acts, underneath equal rights, it clearly states that no individual, sect, organization, or assembly has a right to limit or deny you. Okay, the equal rights, basically. Okay, so this individual, for an example, I'm gonna I'm gonna bring an example in here. Okay, we all know that the Catholics and the Christians do prison ministry, they do hospital ministry, okay, and they're run by these big shots of Catholic religion. This is Roman and Orthodox Catholicdom, okay, so and they'll sit there and say, well, you have to have 10 years worth of this, 20 years of that, you have to have a certain amount before we can allow you to do this. Really, you're limiting my religious rights here, okay, as a minister, okay. Underneath this one act alone, you're basically putting them on notice. Hey, I ain't playing with you, okay. Now, when you go underneath RIFRA, for an example, this is Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and this goes all the way back to the 1960s. Okay, it's been redefined and redone since then numerous times. I believe the last one was 2017, I think, it's 2018 region, and it's been done underneath Clinton. It's been done underneath Trump. Even Biden has even tried this, which is hilarious. Now, what's interesting here is it encompasses all forms of religious practices and observances, whether or not it's central to any religion. Okay. And you can find this under order number 13798, section 4, verse 82. Federal Regulations 21675, which was done in May 4th, 2017. You can look this up underneath Free Exercise Clause, even the Blue Laws. You can go underneath, like I said, the federal, the First Amendment, 14th Amendment, even, and Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. All of this applies to your religious practice. And it's interesting because underneath RIFRA, it basically states that you can go to a cemetery and it does not matter if you're into Pedo Mayumbi or not. If having human bones in your Nagunga, your for an example, or that of an altar made of bone, such as human or animal bones, it has nothing to do with animal rights. They have to, it is based off them to prove to a court of law that you are in violation of that. Okay. Meaning you went out and killed somebody, or you went out and committed some act of terrorism. Okay. Again, Social Security. Okay. It's basically national security aspect right there. Okay. There was actually I want to say it was back in the 80s. Uh, there was actually, was it the 80s? No, I want to say it was the early 2000s area to mid 2000s. There was a woman who was considered to be a high priestess in Pedo Mayumbi. She was originally from Cuba, okay, and she migrated to the United States, specifically that of New York's region. I'm not going to say where. Now, this individual, she her cost for doing practices was quite high. Okay, individuals came to her and they went out and did certain things, such as, say, for an example, desecration of tombs, cemeteries, and stuff, and just taking bones. It's called snatch and grab. Okay, you can actually watch this one on the Skeleton Files. You can find it right on YouTube. Very good show. It's based off anthropology, and as a somebody who's interested in thanatology and anthropology practices, it was natural that I went to that, because it's based off what I practice and what I'm actually learning in college, based off psychological perspectives. It's not just a religious perspective. Now, what's interesting here is, one of the clients actually went to the FBI and said, "Hey, this is going on. So now you've got, drug, the FTA, the Drug, Tobacco, and Firearms Division. You're dealing with the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, coming into this botanica and raiding it, and they're just, so, well, oh my God, you've in violation of this, and this, arresting the person, interrogating the person without giving their Miranda rights, number one, which is an act right there. Everything before that perspective can be thrown out of a court of law, to literally interrogating somebody without an attorney present. Okay, right there, huge violation. Okay, and opens up these two divisions for a lawsuit. Okay, a major lawsuit, and the woman ended up getting like 10 years in prison, from what I understand. Now, what's interesting here is they took all they desecrated this religious altar room, this temple. Okay, now keep in mind that according to the First Amendment, specifically that of the federal law protections for religious liberties, church and state are separate. Okay. Now, what I'm about to say here is going to shock a lot of you. Okay. Meaning, again, underneath the free exercise clause. Okay. And this is where it's going to get tricky for you. Underneath the free exercise law, you have a right to do what, have a religious text. It is protected underneath the First Amendment rights, where what makes up a protected religion. Number one, you have to have a following. Number two, you have to have a place of worship. And number three, you have to have doctrine. Okay? These three things underneath the First Amendment, freedom of religion and freedom of speech, is what makes your religion protected. Okay? It does not matter if you're into Satanism, Wicca, pagan, Christianity, JCI, it does not matter. Okay? Even if you practice voodoo, your rights are protected. Okay, and many religious practices have been noted and okayed by the United States government because of this one act. Okay, so even if you go to work or you are applying for federal, let's say for an example, you're going for to become a senator, a president, or the president of the United States, or whatever, they cannot deny you your based off your religious rights. You have a right to practice your religion, to speak your mind on that religion. And what's interesting here is there's a lot of things that apply to a protected religion. That's why RFRA, the blue law, and the free exercise clause fits in. Is It's literally something that is necessary, and it has been in place since the beginning of the constitutional creation. Okay. Now what's Now this is where I'm going to take it into a whole new direction for you. Okay. Right here, you have what is known as the Canaan Law. The Canaan Law is a Vatican identification for those who are archbishops or bishops in general. Even religious personnel can are basically immune from common law. Okay. Now, what is common law? Common law is what is identified by state to state. It is not associated with federal law. Neopolic law is based. There's only two states in America that befalls Neopolic law, and that is Louisiana and Nevada. Okay, now think about this for just a minute. If you're into Satanism, one of the biggest things is the lust of the flesh. Okay, the lusts of the flesh, and a lot of people follow that of Crowley, for an example, Aleister Crowley's work. Drugs, alcohol, stuff like that. Again, the Federal Bureau of Guns and Firearm and Tobacco and all that stuff will get involved in that. Therefore, it's good to know your rights and regulations there. So here it is. If you have a bunch of people, adults, get together and you are performing a lust ritual or a compassion ritual, for an example, let's say, for an example, you are doing a love ritual, okay, and an orgy befalls that, okay. This is a group orgy, okay. Now they'll try to put it on, say, for an example, prostitution or some form of sexual coercion type thing, okay. Now what's interesting here is this is protected underneath the free exercise clause, and you can go down through that anytime you want. Just Google it, okay, or you can go to your nearest library and get the Constitution books off the old shelves. If you're like me, I'd rather go to the library and sit there for hours and just go through all these dusty books. Why? Because nobody else does it. It's lost on the modern era. So, um, so what I'm saying here is, it does not matter what religion you're covered. Okay, you don't need to sit there and show an officer at 10 o'clock at night why you're in a cemetery. If you have nothing to hide, it is based off them to prove that you're guilty of something. And if they can't even do that, well, you can sit there and go, fuck you. Okay. Now, if they can prove that you've gone into a cemetery and desecrated a tomb or a crypt, or, say, for an example, a grave, you know, then, like I said, they have to put that forth. But if they don't, and you're there after hours, and an officer comes in, well, they all they can do is fine you for being there after curfew, so to speak, after closing hours. It's not they cannot arrest you for, say, trespassing, because it's a public um, location. It's a public location, and based underneath your religious protections, guess what? Most they can do is sit there and give you a misdemeanor, which is anywhere from like $500 to $2,000 for restitution. And all that is basically a fine saying, hey, this person was in a cemetery after closing. That's all they can do. Okay. If you, like I said, I mean, even if you go underneath, you're practicing and somebody accuses you of something, it's based off them to prove without a shadow of doubt that you are guilty. Okay. One of the greatest books that I found was literally, and I'm going to say this in this book. It was based off Pedro Mayumbi, and it was based off the creeds, various different denominations of this particular religion. And this is scattered from Africa all the way into the New World, not just North and South America or Central America. If you practice Santeria, you practice Pedro Mayumbi, Pedro Monte, Voodoo, whatever, these creeds are there. And it was very well written. The person who wrote it is did so in a very logical and legal, outlooks of just that alone. And I forget the name of it offhand, but you can find it on Amazon. It shows a guy standing in a cemetery, right on the photo, and it's basically a very good book. I'd recommend it to you. One of the other ones was written by a guy by the name of Brother Nero, and he wrote a book. It's a purple, kind of a neo purple book, and it's called Satanism for Beginners. Now, this individual, and this is something that has come across my attention from potential clients, customers, and the likes over the last 10 years, is the fact that Child Protective Services comes into play because of the fact that even the legal system comes into play because you are a practicing Satanist. Okay, and this goes back to the Satanic Panic. Okay, it goes back even further than that to the witch trials, to the burning times, the persecutions, even going as far back as the 10th and 11th centuries. Okay, so I mean, it's really nothing new. It's the same BS, just rewritten throughout history, and people are not learning. So you have to enforce it with your personal rights. Okay, so basically, it does not matter if you're traveling. It does not matter if you have a religious establishment. As long as you have a coven, a temple, a church, you have a following, such as a coven, a congregation, okay? You have doctrine, such as a book of shadows or some form of religious text, okay? You're protected, okay? That's all I'm going to say about it, okay? You are protected. If you don't stand up for your own rights, no one else is going to, okay? But keep in mind that you've also got organizations out there trying to control what can be done. We all know that the sentinels of the JCI, the Judo Christian institutions, are controlling the hospitals, controlling the prisons. Okay? Therefore, nobody from, say, the path of Satanism, voodoo, or Wiccan, pagan even, can even get in there to do equal ministries. Okay? So you have to force your way in. You have to force those doors legally, even if that means ending somebody's career as a correctional officer or a bishop. If you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that they are in violation of that, one of the, let me put it to you this way, one of the, oh, what was it? There was a case a while back. It was called Dred Scott versus Sanford, if I remember correctly. This particular case was against the church. Okay, and what it was is back in the 18th century. I want to say it was like 1868 area. Well, hence why it was put into the Constitution to begin with, was for equal rights. Now, it did not matter if you, and a lot of you African Americans are probably going to get pissed at this. So I do apologize in advance and give you notice that what I'm about to say is a historical fact. Okay. And you can actually find it under Dred Scott versus Sanford. Okay. Underneath the federal law in protections of religious liberties. Okay. Now, it did not matter if you were a slave or free. Okay. You had a right, or it didn't even matter if you were male or female. You have a right to join a ministry. Okay. You had a right to become a minister. Okay. And a lot of, even in the 19th century into the 20th century, people are still trying to limit various different religious, ministries. It does not matter. And it comes down to sexism. Okay. And it does. It comes down to sexism. Really. There is like 98% male ministers and only 1 to 2% female ministers in the JCI today. If you join covens, a lot of times a male cannot become a head of a coven. He has to report to the priestess. Okay. Again, sexism. All right. So you do, underneath the Constitution, the United States constitutional amendments, you have full authority to practice through observance and practice of your religion. But make sure they're backed up by the three things of the First Amendment, which are doctrine, a foundation, and a following. Okay? Make sure that you actually understand your religious rights. No law enforcement agency, no federal agency can get involved. Church and state is completely separate. But you do have a right to go to court and bring it before a judge. It does not matter if it is a judicial within a civil court or a federal circuit. It does not matter. If you have a legitimate complaint and no one else is, like, let's say, for example, local authorities are not doing anything about it, guess what? Take it to court. Take it to your civil court, take it to your federal court. Go all the way up to the Supreme Court if you have to. Okay? Does not matter what the cost, does not matter, because you will most likely get 100 times more back. Okay? There was a guy on TikTok, in a TikTok video, that basically he utilized the 14th Amendment. He crossed out his name, basically put on notice, and had the officer that pulled him over sign a letter, a doctorate. Okay. Now this was to put the officer on notification. Hey, I'm not fucking around with you. Do you have this reason? What was your reason for pulling me over? What was my reason? Your reason? What was your reason of suspicion? Okay. Do you actually have a legitimate reason for pulling me over, to asking me to come over to you, for denying me my right to travel or to do my ministry or to do my religion? No, you don't. Well, guess what? You just opened yourself up to a lawsuit. Why? Because you're in violation of the United States constitutional rights of its citizens, the citizens of America. Okay. Now, the 14th Amendment, which is ironic here, and this literally goes into the travel. You do not need a license or identification to travel. You have a right to exit your state, within a national um, right to go from state to state and return without hindrance. You have a right to leave your country and go to a different country and come back to your country without hindrance. Like I said, there's only two things that will prevent that and restrict you, and that is because of national security or health concerns. Okay. Again, the examples I gave was COVID for health. It limited just about everybody worldwide, unless you were a primary worker for a corporation, uh, first responders, even. Outside of that, you can't do shit. They can't do shit to you. And the other one was national security. If there was a national security concern, they could restrict you. But they have to have proof. They have to have evidence supporting their claims. Otherwise, it is illegal to do. Okay? So, um, with that said, knowledge is power, and true power is undefiled wisdom. That was Anton Xander LaVey, the 9 satanic statements. Okay? Back up what you preach. Stand up for what you believe in. And most importantly, take conviction in what you do. Okay? You're protected. No one else is going to do this for you, so you have to stand up and say, hey, this is the exact penal code that you're in violation of. This is the amendment that you're in violation of. One thing standing alone, well, guess what? You can't really, it's going to be hard to prove in a court of law. But if they have a wide range of things, like, say, the violation of the First Amendment or the freedom of, the Equal Rights Act, the 14th Amendment, okay? I mean, hell, I've experienced this myself. I, for example, I walked downtown once, and I had this Latino officer. I don't even know if he's still with the police force, but to the this day. But um, this particular officer, drove by me. I was standing on the road, you know, and I was debating whether to go left, right, straight, or whatever. Do I want to go for lunch first? Do I want to go shopping first and then lunch and then home? Because there was three directions I could have gone. Okay, and I decided to go right. And this officer calls me over and he says, "Hey, do you have any identification? Why do you have I done anything wrong? No, you just look suspicious. Really? Hmm. Well, what's suspicious about me? Is it because I'm dressed head to toe in black? Black clothes, black shoes, black pants, black shirt. Wow. Wearing glasses, long hair. Woo. Yeah, real suspicious. Huh. Okay. Do you have any evidence to back it up? No. Okay. Well, right there, I did not do so. In fact, I chose to hand him my identification and say, "Hey, this is who I am. Now, why did you ask me to come over? Well, you look like somebody we're looking for. Really? Wow. Okay. So you see, this is what they can do. They can change their story as many times and tell you whatever they want. They can even lie to you. Okay. They can lie right to your face, but yet legally, you cannot lie to them as a civilian. So, again, my expression to you and my intent here is to tell you you have rights. The 1967 or 1964 titles VI and VII under the Civil Rights Act, you're protected through your religious rights. Okay? First Amendment rights, 14th Amendment rights, Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. Even if you want to add firearms into your religion because it symbolizes death and violence, for an example, you're protected underneath the Second Amendment. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is now, according to national law enforcement perspectives and rights, if an officer has 20 anywhere from 10 to 25 years of experience and they have a psychological degree, they deem you unfit. They can walk into your house without an excuse and take your firearms. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, observances and practices are protected. Core, Bokora, Hungan, Mambo, for an example, a Papa or a Mamba, a Marimberos or a Santero, going into a church and saying, "I'm confiscating your chalice or your cross because it violates my religious beliefs." Well, guess what? You can't do that. Every religion is protected by the Constitution. Okay. So again, you have RFRA, okay, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. You have the Blue Law. You have the Free Exercise Clause, and you have the Civil Rights Acts, VI and VII. Okay. All of these protect you. Okay. Stand up for it. Put it forth, and I guarantee it, you can force them to go fuck themselves. All right. With that said, have a good day. And until next time, I'm out.